Hey everyone, today we're diving into the latest Firebirds development server for War Thunder, starting with the new addition to ground forces. I'll be breaking down each vehicle's armor, firepower, mobility, and overall performance, and comparing them with some of the most popular opponents you're likely to encounter. For those of you who want to dig into the numbers, I've created a detailed album, and I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to go at your own pace. This video was a bigger project, so I hope you really enjoy it, and I'll kick things off with the First Nation and looking at the new US vehicles. The US finally receives a brand new SPA to fill a gap it nearly had for 10 years, the T-77E1. This SPA comes at rank 2 and a battle rating of 3.7, right after the M16 MGMC and right before the M19. The armor is the exact same on the chassis for the hull due to it being on the same platform. It's not something to solely rely on, but you will shrug off most machine guns, and it's at least up to 40mm thick. The turret, however, is a lot less armored with only 14 to 15mm plates, so you can have some difficulty against strafing targets, especially those with higher velocity cannons or 20mm and 30mm. The firepower you get is relatively good for an anti-air. It's not German 20mm AA, but you get 6 50 cals, giving you a lot of burst mass and a very high fire rate. Along with this, you get 6,000 plus rounds of ammo in reserves, giving you the ability to spray away at aircraft and burn through ammo as you please. Due to it being on the Chaffee chassis, the T-77E1 is relatively mobile. It's not insanely fast like a wheeled vehicle, but can move around the battlefield at decent speeds. Having a solid horsepower per turn ratio with its 262 horsepower engine, you should be able to flank around the sides of some maps and get into some fun positions in this thing. Finally end off by showcasing its modifications. The standard 50 cal belt basically has everything you need, but you also will unlock the ammo pretty early before tier 4. Should be a really good SPA for that Sherman 3.7 or 4.0 lineup, and potentially over the M19 if preferred, if you find aiming the 50 cals a lot easier than the dual 40s. The US also receives a second SPAA, filling a long-lasting gap in its line, similar to what the T-77E1 is doing. This SPAA is already in the game in the British tree and has been copied over to give America more options at its battle rating. This vehicle is completely unchanged from its British counterpart except for the camouflage, but I will say I wish they picked the prototype Skink on the American M4A1 hull to give it some variety rather than using the same Canadian Grizzly hull that the British Skink has. The Luchs A2 is a German Cold War 8x8 recon armored amphibious fighting vehicle produced from 1975 to 1977. This vehicle will give Germany access to a lightly armored and mobile chassis at rank 5 and a battle rating of 7.3. For now, it is in the SPAA line between the Weasel 1A4 and Gepard. Its armor is what you'd expect from a lightly armored and amphibious vehicle. Its upper plate has enough sloping to grant you 50mm of protection, around the same as what the turret gives you. However, anything on the lower plate and sides will go right through you at max 30 to 40mm thickness on the front plate and 18mm on the sides and rear. Use its mobility, don't use its armor. For its firepower, you get access to the 20mm RH202 autocannon. Same gun as on the Weasel and Martyrs. This relatively effective autocannon gives you DM63 up to 66mm of penetration and has a high rate of fire at up to 800 rounds per minute. Using its speed to flank around and shoot weak spots, you should have a fun time against lightly armored targets. However, some MBTs like the T-Series will have to be severely flanked for you to be able to penetrate its sides and rear. For mobility, it's on its own unique 8x8 chassis. This lightly armored vehicle boasts around 345 horsepower, giving it pretty good power to weight ratio, especially for its battle rate. In a down tier, you'll be fighting purely World War II vehicles with generally much slower engines and transmissions, and even with a full up tier, most MBTs will not be able to keep up with you. It being amphibious means you can also do some funny flanking routes on some specific maps, but this is more of a meme thing to do and is not something that will be always used. Finally, showing off its modifications, you won't get DM63 until rank 4, but unlike most others at your battle rating, you will get thermals at rank 1 for the gunner. This tank should be pretty fun to play and should be really interesting at its battle rating. The OSA-AK and AKM is a Russian SAM system exported to both East Germany, India, and Romania during the late Cold War and early 2000s. Coming to Russia, Germany, Great Britain, and Italy, this SAM system comes to the game at rank 7 and a battle rating of 10.3 for all 4 nations. It's in the SPAA line between the ZSU 23-4M4 and the Strela 10M2 for Russia, in a folder with the Flak Panzer 1 for Germany, and between the Stormer HVM and M113 ADATs for the UK, and finally the Sidam 25 Mistral and automatic for Italy. The OSA-AK and AKM has 6 launchers, each with a 9M33 M3 SAM. This missile consists of a large 8.3 kg warhead on a missile able to reach 25 Gs of overload. Having a maximum speed of up to 580 meters a second and a range of 6.4 miles, with a guidance time of 24 seconds, this missile should be pretty good even with killing helicopters due to it being SACLOS rather than purely IR like many other SAMs before it. The OSA-AK and AKM also has a search radar with a range of about 22 miles and a full 360-degree search range. It also has IFF, look down, BVR, and ACM modes, along with being in the D-band. With a range of about 15 miles for the tracking radar and 6.4 miles for the missile, most helicopter and air-to-ground missiles will not be able to outrange you. The mobility of the OSA-AK and AKM is below average but solid, with it being placed on a BAZ 3-axle chassis with a decent engine for its weight, but a below average top speed. Along with the Luchs A2, this thing is also amphibious, so for a few maps you can use it to hide on the corners and shoot down some aircraft. Looking at the modifications, we don't have anything special, but that's good because you get the best missile stock and don't have to wait until rank 4 to research them. So overall, just get parts in FBE and go with the rest as you wish. The Object 140 is a new Soviet 8.3 premium MBT currently being sold as a pre-order pack. This prototype was a potential replacement for the T-54, but the project was eventually canned for the Object 430 instead. This MBT comes at rank 6 and can be used with the smaller Russian 8.3 lineup. The Object 140's armor consists of a 100mm sloped upper front plate and a 200mm sloping cast turret. This armor at a BR of 8.3 is decent, however most top shells at your bracket will be able to go through your front plate and lower parts of the turret, usually taking out your gun and crew in one shot. Even though you shouldn't rely so much on the armor, this turret is rather trolly sometimes, especially on those rank 5 Russian MBTs, and in a down tier, your armor can stop a fair bit. Firepower consists of a Soviet D-54 TS 100mm gun. This gun packs a solid punch for its battle rating, and despite the longer reload time of 11 seconds, you get access to pretty good heat FS rounds at 380mm a pen, with capped APHE as backup. However, the APDS you get will usually be more reliable, and has the highest penetration at its BR. Like most early Russian MBTs, your mobility will be mostly subpar, able to beat out the heavier M60s and Centurions, but your transmission is seriously lacking. You still have the awful 1 reverse gear giving you a maximum of 5 miles an hour in reverse, so don't rely too much on its mobility and you will be a bit more sluggish than everyone else, especially in a full up tier. Finally showcasing its modifications, even though it is a premium, you will get all of this by default. I figured to show it anyway. Just like the Canadian Skink being placed over in the US tree, the British are also receiving the Ram too. This 3.7 premium used to be exclusive to America, but will now be available to both nations. It also gains a brand new unique camo to separate it from the American one. The Scimitar is a new 7.7 British recon vehicle or light tank. This tank will arrive at rank 5 right before the Fox and packs a great 30mm Rardin. With it being the same BR as the Fox, you can run both in one lineup and in a full down tier fight late World War II vehicles. The armor is what you'd expect from a light reconnaissance vehicle. It has a heavily sloped 25mm upper front plate and a 35mm lower front plate. The upper front plate is extremely sloped, but due to the size of the lower front plate, your armor is extremely thin. The turret as well barely goes above 70mm of protection, with 41mm thickness in total. But this can at least absorb some higher caliber machine guns and some lower caliber cannons. Scimitar has a really good 30mm L21A1 Rardin autocannon, packing some of the best penetration for an autocannon at its BR. Anyone who's used a Fox knows how potent this gun is, and the Scimitar comes with all the exact same ammo types as the Fox. The mobility is actually pretty good, especially when compared to other nations' autocannon light vehicles, even when compared with the wheeled BTR-80s. This mobility should allow you to flank pretty quickly, especially due to how much faster you are compared to late World War II and early post-war tanks. Lastly, showing off its modifications, nothing out of the ordinary, but at least you get the APDS-T at rank 3 rather than 4. Japan is receiving the tech tree version of the RCVP, squadron vehicle they received last update, the ICVP. This light support and reconnaissance vehicle is sitting at 9.7, rank 7 after the Type 87 RCV. It has the same 30mm Bushmaster 2 like the squadron vehicle and is on a decently quick 8x8 chassis. However, unlike the squadron vehicle, you don't have this massive reconnaissance CITV tower in the back of the hull, so this can be seen as a benefit or a weakness. Just like the Luchs A2, the armor is what you'd expect for a light-wheeled reconnaissance vehicle. The extremely sloped upper front 20mm plate can reach maybe 100mm of protection, but the larger lower plate reaches at most 65mm. The turret, however, is unmanned, so despite it being loosely armored, getting directly hit in it should be extremely survivable. You also have a spall liner around the entire chassis protecting the crew. Just like the other 30mm Bushmasters, you have an extremely reliable autocannon, especially at your BR. You have higher penetration than most, a larger magazine capacity, and a solid rate of fire. This gun, especially on a wheeled chassis, is something that should get you some easy kills, especially if you go on flanking rounds. Despite there not being many wheeled light tanks around this BR, you are in fact the fastest, with the highest horsepower per ton ratio out of all of them. This speed, along with a solid gun, should allow you to slip around the flanks of larger maps and shoot plenty of MBTs in the side. To conclude with its modifications, you don't get anything crazy, however you get thermals at rank 2 for both the gunner commander. You also get a laser warning system at rank 2 and the APFSDS rounds at rank 3. The Chinese PLZ-05 is a 155mm self-propelled howitzer sitting at rank 5 and a battle rating of 7.7, right after the PLZ-83. This SPG has a quick 7.5 second reload, a laser rangefinder, and a variable time fuse HE shell. With this fighting many early Cold War and later World War II vehicles, it should be able to laser and obliterate anything in its path. Considering this is an SPG, the armor is not something extremely important. The most you will get is 25mm and 30mm plating around the hull and turret, and surprisingly, you get a full spall liner around the turret. This was not designed to be in frontline direct combat, however, or in any tank-on-tank engagements, so don't rely on its armor. The 155mm PL-05 cannon should make easy work at any tank of your BR or even 1 or 2 BRs above you. This large, quick reloading gun combined with the laser rangefinder comes with both HEVT, standard HE, and semi-armored piercing, with an HE round packing 8.4 kilograms TNT. Despite it being an SPG, you do have decent mobility, having a solid power to weight ratio and an average top speed. This also beats the mobility of most other SPGs in the game, including the ones in the BRs above you. To end with its modifications, you get the armor piercing shells at rank 2 and the timed HE shells at rank 3. However, what you should look for is a rank 4 laser rangefinder, being able to use the 155mm guns to snipe enemies with the HEVT. France will be receiving 3 Dutch Leopard 2s at rank 7 and 8. These Leopards are all identical to those in the German tech tree and include the Leopard 2A4NL, the 2A5NL, and the 2A6NL. These Dutch tanks come at the end of the AMX-40 line and follow the same BR as the German ones. The Finnish BMP-2 MD is a 2016 upgrade to the BMP in service, arriving to Sweden as a squadron vehicle at rank 6 and a battle rating of 8.7. The Finnish BMPs removed their Russian ATGMs, but in turn, this will have a much newer fire control system, including a modern thermal imager. The armor has been slightly improved, with some external plating and boxes adding to its modernization. However, it's still very much a lightly armored vehicle. The external plating, combined with the extremely sloped upper front plate, will bounce most autocannons at your BR, but the larger lower plate hits at most 60mm thick. The turret, however, is also slightly less armored, hitting at most 30mm thick. The firepower consists of the Russian 30mm 2A42 autocannon, packing some decent firepower for its BR. Its 30mm APDS, combined with its high rate of fire, should put in good work, especially at 8.7. The mobility is slightly below average, but still sitting nearly in the middle of the pack with 18 horsepower per ton. Due to being heavier than the BMP-2 with its external modifications, it has slightly less horsepower per ton. Despite all this though, it's not anything slow, and can still flank around the map and push cap zones at decent speeds. To conclude with its modifications, due to being a squadron vehicle and not a premium, you will need to research all modifications. You get access to thermals at rank 2 with the APTS and UAV at rank 3. I would aim to snag these as soon as possible after the standard parts and FPE. The Magog tech tree strikes again. The new Sabra Mk.I is an Israeli and Turkish upgrade package for the M60, sitting at the end of the Magog Rhine at rank 7 and a battle rating of 9.7. This tank is extensively used by the Turkish armed forces today and was jointly developed with Israel. The armor was improved nearly as much as physically possible for an M60. The front plate was given an extra 120mm composite screen, along with a massive 85mm composite screens all across the turret. This gives the M60 significantly improved protection and is able to obtain a large amount of chemical protection of up to 700mm. Along with this, you have 260mm of kinetic protection on the hull and 300 to 400mm of kinetic protection on the turret. Heat effect won't be a problem, but kinetic will usually go through your center, turret, and especially in an up tier. Its weaponry consists of a 120mm IMI MG253 cannon, developed by Israel and is very similar to the 120mm L44. This 120mm at 9.7 will pack an amazing punch and will be able to basically auto-pen any tank you fight at up to 589mm of penetration. The Sabra Mk.I receives an upgraded 1400 horsepower engine, giving it below average power to weight ratio, but was desperately needed due to the massive weight increase of all the new additions. This tank, however, it has also a below average top speed of 30 miles an hour, so use it more of a ridgeline sniper with its amazing ammo rather than flanking and brawling speeds. Ending with its modifications, we mostly have the standard stuff, although luckily you get the amazing M322 ammo at rank 2, giving you ammo to go pretty much through anything early. After that, you got a laser rangefinder and thermals at rank 4.